So, let's see. Great. So, this presentation will serve as kind of an overview of the graduate school selection process, and it will also kind of go over some U.S. university lingo that is important to kind of understand as you're going through and looking at various websites. And then afterwards, we'll go through kind of the path towards identifying that program that best fits what you're looking for in your education. So first, an overview of just some basic lingo and just words that you're probably going to encounter along the way. The first that I was asked to kind of review is majors, minors, certificates, and concentrations. What are they? So a major is your undergraduate specialization. This was kind of the primary focus of your bachelor's degree. And then these can also be further broken up into concentrations. So you might have had a broad major, but within that major, there were several areas that then you could focus further on. This is different from a minor, which similar to a major is listed on your transcript. But it doesn't have the same level of significance. They usually are used more to spell or to show knowledge and to demonstrate understanding in a particular area, but they're usually about half the time commitment. And then certificates have less credits than a minor and usually deal with more niche specializations, whereas majors and minors tend to be more broad. So for example, to kind of demonstrate this, myself personally, I major in global studies, but my concentration is conflict resolution and Europe more broadly, or more specifically. My minor is in geography and geographic information systems, and then I have a certificate in arms control and domestic and international security. So you can kind of see how it's like a very broad range for the majors and minors, and then the certificate, super niche. And so as you're going through the program search, a couple of more professionally oriented graduate schools may require you to have a certain experience or background with a certain major in your undergraduate years. This is less relevant, however, in more interdisciplinary fields like mine would be. What are credit hours? So the US, most schools run with graduate students having credit hours, and these vary greatly based on which school you're attending. So graduate credits here at the University of Illinois are usually about 4 credit hours. However, other schools might not use the same number of credit hours that the U of I does, and so this varies based on which school you're looking at. So that's kind of just a heads up that you might want to note. So credit hours are used to indicate how much time commitment a course contains, but you can't really compare them necessarily between schools. So just because one course at the University of Illinois is 4 credit hours and one at, say, Notre Dame is 2, it doesn't mean that the time commitment at the University of Illinois is more than the time commitment at Notre Dame. They just have different credit hours systems. And so that's just a quick thing you need to kind of note going in is just because one program has a higher number of graduating coursework in terms of credit hour length, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have as much time intensive classes. So you just kind of need to look at what it is that they're offering. Another thing to pay attention to is the actual true cost. So whenever you are looking up how much the programs that you're looking at cost, the cost of attendance is not just your tuition and fees. True cost includes room and boards, books, transportations, anything that is outside of the tuitions that you're still going to be expected and responsible for paying when you're here in the US. So what I have is a picture here of kind of cost of attendance breakdown. So you can see direct cost, which are payable to the university itself, includes tuitions and fees. But then estimated cost, usually schools will provide you with kind of external expenses that they estimate for their area. So how much does room and board potentially cost? How much do they think you might spend on books and supplies? And this is usually broken up by semester and by year. And so then what you're looking for is the total cost of attendance. So there at the bottom, you can see highlighted, this total cost of attendance is about $31,000 a year. So yeah. Another key thing to look at when you're applying for schools or looking at schools is being sure to know the difference between need blind and need aware. So a need blind admissions process does not care if you can pay or not. They're looking only at your test scores, and they're looking at they're not understanding what your financial need is. And so you're going to be admitted regardless of whether or not you can pay, and it's all based on your own merit. Need aware is a school that wants to know if you are able to pay for your education. And so this is probably going to be the category that most universities fall into when you're looking at applying as an international student. However, as we'll discuss later, there are numerous opportunities that universities offer to help mitigate the costs. But if you note that a school is need aware, don't automatically think that that means that they're need blind, because they're two completely different categorizations. One of them will not look at your financial statements while they're doing the admissions process, one will. So now that we've kind of covered a couple of lingo and important things to know before going into your search, I'm going to kind of go over a path to help you guys start narrowing down your program selection choices, because the United States is a huge country and we have hundreds of different universities and opportunities for students. So it kind of seems overwhelming to go through and figure out which process is best or which university is best for you. So the one thing that I do want to point out and make sure you guys are aware of is that you should be looking for the best fit for you. And that doesn't mean that it has to be a name brand school. So the Ivy League is great, but it's not the end all be all. You don't need to attend an Ivy League university for a quality education. And so when you're looking at the list of schools, just because you don't recognize the name of the university doesn't mean that you're not going to receive equally or better education than you would in an Ivy League. The Ivy League is actually just a sports conference. So for the University of Illinois, we are in the Big Ten Sports Conference, which includes several other large public universities, plus I believe Northwestern. The Ivy League is an East Coast sports university. It doesn't necessarily mean that the universities are better than others for particular programs, especially when it comes to graduate schools. They might offer some higher levels of funding because they're well endowed, but if you're kind of looking at school, you need to make sure that you are qualified to enter schools. So don't focus primarily on the Ivies, and definitely look to try and find other programs as well. So for organizing your journey, this is kind of a quick overview. So identify, create, find, remove, support, narrow down, and select. So these are kind of the categories that I will be going over in order to help you guys kind of understand a process that I would use in order to figure out where I wanted to go. So identify what you're looking for. So does this university have a program that you want to study? Are the specifics of the program, such as networking opportunities, professors, research access, do they offer what it is you're looking for? And then also make sure to take into consideration kind of what you feel you would operate best within. So there's public and private institutions, public being funded by the state, private is funded by mostly their tuition costs and alumni donations. Are you looking for a large or small school? Some of the universities here have a couple thousand students, some have tens of thousands of students. Do you want to be on the East Coast or the West Coast? There's a huge cultural difference between what it's like to live on the East Coast versus the West Coast versus the Midwest. So if you think there's an area that you would best want to gain that experience from, then kind of looking at where the location of the school is. And then also, does it provide financial aid to international students? Because unless you're super well off, then it's really difficult to pay for an education all by yourself, even for American students. And so trying to find financial aid is super important. And if a school offers everything that you are looking for, but it doesn't have financial aid available to you, then it makes it really difficult to actually attend that school. So kind of what I recommend doing is creating an Excel sheet that lists potential schools that you're interested in, and then having different categories that you're looking for. So I threw this together without a lot of actual interest for my own self, but it's just a way to kind of give an idea of what this would look like. So on my list, there are two universities, Middlebury Institute and the University of Illinois. So if I'm going through and I'm looking for a highly recognized program that's on the East Coast, small, private, and it offers financial support, you can see that the Middlebury Institute has 4 of these 5 categories, the only one being that it's not on the East Coast because this is a university in California. And then the University of Illinois does not offer really any of the categories I'm looking for. So what you want to do then is mark whether or not these programs and institutions that you're looking for are meeting kind of what your expectations or needs are. So along the left-hand side, you should have a list of schools, and this can be as long or as short as you think necessary, and then kind of using a color coding system so that way when you're going through later, you can clearly identify which schools are more closely aligning with your interests. So the idea is now that we're on this journey, you kind of need a pack for success. So what you're needing to have within this Excel sheet that we just went over is the university name, the name of the program that you're looking for. So are you getting a master's in accounting? Are you going to a school for a master's in international relations, PhD in psychology? Different programs or different universities have different programs, and the names and titles of those programs might be different. So it's also important to note that. So are you specifically looking to get a master's in this university in international relations, or do they have a more specific track that you're looking into and you want to focus specifically on issues in the Balkans? And then where it's located, the cost of attendance. Are there any professors that you're interested in working with there? And then do you meet the admissions requirements? And do they offer financial aid? A lot of this stuff can be found on their websites. But if you're looking at a website and you're not really able to identify whether or not there is a professor that's looking for some more graduate students to work with, obviously you're going to have to reach out to them. And we'll talk about that a bit more later as well. So The first thing you should do is remove schools that you don't qualify for. So test scores often indicate the likelihood of being admitted to a program, but if you don't meet the school's baseline TOEFL's test scores, then you're not going to be admitted. So you kind of have to look at whether or not you qualify to apply to these schools. And essentially, if your test scores are not matching what they're asking for, then you should go ahead and remove those from your list, because applying for schools is a time-intensive and expensive process, and so it's not necessarily worth keeping those on your list unless you plan to start retaking tests in order to achieve the scores that they're looking for. So when you're kind of going through, it's also kind of a very good way of judging like which schools are good for you by marking if you think what you think your acceptance likelihood will be. So marking those, you will definitely be accepted, likely to be accepted, unlikely to be accepted. And these indications can be changed throughout your process. So as you learn more information by reaching out to professors, or when you find out more about their admissions process and what they're looking for, then you can change these along the way. And then you should kind of try and have a mix of definitely will be accepted and likely to be accepted whenever you start picking your final schools. So now you're looking at your programs, and you need to know if the program that you're interested in has people that are interested in serving as your advisor, and if they're interested in having graduate students come and work with them. And so this is kind of a brief template of how you might want to start shaping your email to these professors. So, dear Professor X, naming them, and then give them a brief background on what you have studied, but more importantly, remember to focus on what their work is. Talk about research that you've seen in their career field, things that have inspired you, how you see their field relating, and make sure that you clearly demonstrate that you're very interested in what they've been doing. And you can do that by specifically mentioning recent works and books and articles that they've worked on that you have then read. So one thing that you should do is be sure to personalize each email and then be very specific. So do not send out generic copy and paste emails. Professors get tons of emails from their undergraduate students, from people looking to do research with them. And so if it's specific, if it's personalized, then it means more and they're more likely to respond. If they can clearly tell that it's very generic, or if you copied and pasted it from an email that you sent to another professor, then they're probably more likely to tell and less likely to want to respond. Make sure that you discuss which aspects of that professor's research is interesting to you, and tie in your own goals to that professor's research, and kind of demonstrate that you have an idea of what they're working on, and if you have any ideas for that research as well. What you're wanting to do is kind of send just a very brief, to the point email of, I'm interested in working with you. I've already done significant research on who you are, what you're studying, and this is the place that I want to go. So you don't kind of really want to give them an indication that you're interested in other places as well. So try and avoid using phrases like, I'm considering applying to your university. Your university is one of the places that I'm thinking of applying, because it shows less commitment and it takes away from the fact that you have been talking about their research. So make them the focal point of that essay and make it seem like this is your number one place as you're kind of reaching out to professors to get an idea of whether or not they're looking for graduate students. So more importantly, that I think a lot of people are really interested in is how do you support your education? So international students are barred from receiving aid from the US government in the form that most domestic students do. So here in the US, American citizens usually fill out a FAFSA form, and then you can receive financial aid based on need directly from the government if you qualify. However, when it comes to international students, this process is different and you don't have that direct support and you're looking to find other avenues. So this can be through tuition waivers, research and teaching assistance, need or merit-based aid, which are usually referred to as fellowships in graduate studies, and international scholarships. So tuition waivers are either partial or full. So what a lot of you will probably be looking for is a full tuition waiver, which means that you don't have to pay the tuition cost, and they likely waive the fees as well. So what this does is then you only have to try and find funding for the external costs like housing, transportation, books, and other expenses that come, but the actual cost that you pay to the university is completely waived. Sometimes they don't give full waivers and they'll give only a partial, so make sure to note if they're offering you a tuition waiver, whether or not it's full or partial, and if it's partial, then how much and what percentage of the tuition is going to be covered by them. A lot of schools will give priority to recipients of Fulbrights and other international education programs. So if you receive one of those, then obviously you're going to mention that in your application, and then you will hopefully you're most likely going to get a tuition waiver from that university as well. Research and teaching assistantships are working positions within a university to help provide assistance to a professor either in his research or leading class sections. So these are particularly prominent in larger universities. So here at the University of Illinois, many of our classes are taught in larger sections by the professors themselves. So in our lectures, particularly in lectures that have anywhere from 50 to 100 students, these usually have lectures that are taught by the professor, and then there will be a discussion section, and that discussion section is led by teaching assistants. And so these teaching assistants work more one-on-one with smaller classrooms of students, usually no more than 20, and they do a lot of the grading and behind the scenes work that goes into running a classroom. If any of you guys are interested in kind of knowing more specifically about what teaching assistantships are involved in, you can feel free to message me. I've served as an undergraduate teaching assistant here at the university, so I can talk a little bit more about what that all entails. And then research assistantships mean that you'll be working with the professor on his current research in addition to probably doing your own research on the side. And so for your graduate program. And so basically what these then do are they're usually partner or paired with tuition waivers. So if you work as a teaching assistant or a research assistant, then you likely will be paid using full or partial tuition waivers as compensation. And then some schools also offer further benefits, including like living stipends to help mitigate external costs. Some universities offer healthcare or childcare as well. And these are usually gotten through different union negotiations. So the University of Illinois has a graduate student union, and so every year they enter negotiations with the schools to try to improve various aspects of graduate life here on campus. And so getting healthcare and childcare included in with the package is kind of something that they've been looking to do as well. So one thing that might be beneficial is reaching out to graduate school or graduate students to try and see if they can answer any questions about what it's like living on campus. Merit and need-based aid, which are fellowships, are offered by graduate schools to serve as sort of a form of being able to recruit super qualified candidates. So if you are someone that the university is really, really interested in having attend, then they might offer merit-based fellowships in order to get you to come to the school. When it comes to international students, these can kind of be much more limited, but underrepresented countries are eligible or preferred on a school-by-school basis. So when you go through online and you're looking at a university's webpage, they will have tabs usually for international students, financial aid, for the graduate programs. So make sure and see if you can find any information on if they offer need-based fellowships. And if you can't find anything on the website, then just be sure to call the university, talk to someone in the admissions office, talk to someone in their financial aid office, and ask, because you're not going to be able to find information that they don't just publicly make available online. And sometimes it just takes a phone call to kind of get the information that you're actually looking for. And schools they have offices for the specific purpose of answering people's calls when they come in, when you're curious about whether or not you can actually be supported by a certain institution. Fellowships are also listed on department websites. So as you're looking for different schools, you should look and see if you can find pages that specifically talk about which fellowships are offered at certain universities, because a lot of them will offer a significant number of fellowships that are open to both domestic and international students. So competition will be a bit more stiff, but these could be avenues for funding your education. And then if you have any questions about it, obviously you should contact those schools for more information. And then finally, international scholarships are an amazing way to try and fund your postgraduate education. The most common that I think people know about is the Fulbright Commission Fellowship. And so the Fulbright is super competitive, but super prestigious, and offers scholarships to students who are looking to come to the US to study. But there's also other fellowships that are less well known and they don't have the same level of name recognition, but the American Association of, I believe I should say University Women, offers fellowships for non-American women. The International Peace Scholarship, the Humphrey Fellowship Program, and there's tons more. So you should go through and try and conduct an online scholarship search. So if you're looking for assistance in funding your university studying, don't necessarily rely only on the universities here to try and get help. You should also try and apply to as many international scholarships as you can. Basically, my rule of thumb is the only way to guarantee that you're not going to get something is if you don't apply for it. So putting out there, writing your scholarship applications, these are kind of the ways in order to get more funding that you wouldn't have if you hadn't put out that application. So how do you identify if schools have financial aid? Like I said, they're available on their websites. Usually, if you don't see anything, then maybe try and contact the department. When you're reaching out to professors, if they express interest in you working with them, you can probably also talk to them about how much support departments give to their graduate students. If you're looking for a PhD, these usually get fully funded, but you will want to confirm that with the department you're working for, or you're going to be, and the university that you're going to be studying at, because if it's not, then that's important to note right away. But try and also find out if you can find like an aid calculator on the website. Some universities have this, and that'll show you whether or not the university will estimate if you will be receiving like need-based financial support. It's super helpful in kind of understanding how much support they give to students. And then obviously, once again, if the website remains unclear, email the school, call the school, see what you can be eligible for, because they're going to be able to direct you to pages and information that you might not have been able to find on your own. So now that you've kind of gone over a list of what you're looking for in your program, you've marked on your Excel sheet whether or not these schools are kind of hitting your own personal interest. You know whether or not you should be able to get financial aid. If there's a professor that's interested in working for you, start narrowing down your choices. So schools that kind of match what you're looking for less, start taking those off your list. So maybe this school doesn't offer exactly what you're looking for in a program. The academics just isn't as good as the other schools that you're looking at. Maybe the faculty member that you wanted to work with is about to retire, so that school doesn't really have someone for you to work closely with. Maybe the school doesn't have a huge alumni network and you're looking for a program that can give you tons of connections. And if it doesn't have that, then maybe that isn't the school for you. And then, obviously, most importantly, are they willing to provide financial assistance? And if yes, then weigh more heavily on those schools. So once you have that, then hopefully you can then select your top 4 to 6 grad schools. By applying to several, then you're able to look at what financial packages they're offering and what you're going to look at paying when it comes to coming to the US to study. So you don't want to end up only applying for 1 to 2 schools and then having only those 2 choices and neither of them being able to provide you with the financial support that you're looking for. By having a larger range of like 4 to 6, then you're able to kind of compare financial packages. You can also enter negotiations. So if one school is offering you a full tuition waiver plus a stipend, but it's not really the school that you're interested in, then you can use that to try and get the other school to offer you more aid in order to get you to attend their school if they're super interested. So having that wider range, though, allows you to have a better understanding of which schools are more affordable to attend, and it doesn't leave you without an option. And then here at the end, I have compiled a list of some potentially helpful websites for you guys if you're looking at starting your search here soon. So the first one is kind of some places you can go to find universities that frequently give money to international students. So fundingustudy.org, highertimeseducation.com, and blog.collegefind.com had some lists of institutions here in the US that are known for giving some level of financial aid support. And so you can use these to try and find if universities that you're looking at are offering support to international students. Obviously, though, more accurate information can be found by contacting universities themselves, but this is kind of a good way to get an understanding at a base level. And then when you're actually looking for programs, then there are a number of websites that you can go to kind of help with your search and filter through what it is you're looking for. So if you're looking for specifically an accounting program, then you're going to put that into these search bars, and then hopefully they can pull up universities that will have accounting programs, because not every school would. And so with that, that is the end of my presentation. So if you guys have any questions that you'd like me to answer at this time, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat, and then I will go ahead and answer those. Yes, so the presentation is being recorded, so it will be uploaded to YouTube, and then I will put the presentation, just the PowerPoint slides, up on the Facebook group page, so that way you guys can access the different links and information very easily without having to go through and pause a YouTube video. But if you're looking to kind of rewatch the presentation, then that will be available on the Graduate Study Advising Facebook page that EducationUSA-Belarus has. Cool. Any other questions that people might have regarding tuition waivers, teaching assistantships, trying to find a program, reaching out to professors? Anything that you guys thought I didn't cover that might be helpful later, or just for me, helpful for me to go over right now? Any information that wasn't in the presentation? Okay, cool. So I think that is everything then. I hope that this was super helpful for all of you, and it kind of serves as almost a guide for the process going forward and helping you guys know what you're kind of looking for. It's really a lot of communication and reaching out to people and kind of getting an understanding of what's available to you at different universities. And so going through and narrowing down your selection is super important, because obviously you can't reach out and talk to hundreds of different schools. So that's why I really recommend using sort of an Excel sheet to kind of gather your thoughts on which programs and universities you're looking for. And then that way you're not wasting your time going and contacting universities that don't actually have the program specifics that you want. And then, as always, if you guys start your application process for any of the international scholarships, or you're wanting to send an email to a professor, then and you want someone to look at it before you send it, please feel free to send them to me. Try and give me a bit of time between when you need them, because it does sometimes take a couple of days for me to be able to look at essays. So just keep that in mind. If you're waiting last minute to apply to something, then there's a chance that I might not be able to look at it in time. One question is there any chance for applying to graduate schools with a low GPA like 3.0 and with financial support? So you can still get into universities with lower GPAs, especially if you have significant experience like in a professional field. So some universities are looking for people with stellar academics, but that doesn't mean that extends to all universities. And a lot of places are looking for a broader range of students. And so just because you have a lower GPA doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad student. It could mean that there are other life situations that made your GPA lower. So let's say you were working full time while you were doing it, or maybe school just like wasn't necessarily your thing back when you were an undergrad, but you've been out into the workforce for several years. And so obviously all of the things that go into your package are going to be taken into consideration. And so just looking at graduate studies websites, kind of gauging what their average GPA is. So if you look at a program and it says that their usual admitted students have GPAs of 3.9, then maybe try and back away from those programs because the chance of admittance is much lower. But there's definitely programs out there that take people with lower GPAs, and that isn't really a huge bar against people. Cool. So yes, you're welcome. With that, I think I will go ahead and wrap up this call. Thank you guys all for attending. If you have any questions that you couldn't think of right now, but you think of it later, then obviously at any point, feel free to message me. A lot of you have my Skype. Several of you guys have Facebook, or you can email me, whatever is your best mode of communication. I'm here to try and help you guys with whatever it is that you guys are needing. So with that,